Mesdames et messieurs, bonsoir et bienvenue à notre émission Forum communautaire. L'émission qui vous promet d'être toujours à l'avant-garde de l'actualité, la politique, l'économie, l'éducation, la science, la santé, la loi et le divertissement. Forum communautaire est une émission télévisée tous les dimanches de 4h30 à 5h30 sur AVEC Jean, WCEA, chaîne 58, COMCAST 729. Notre ambition, c'est d'être vos yeux, vos pieds ainsi que vos oreilles, espérant de partager avec vous le meilleur. Pour vos publicités, questions, commentaires et suggestions, consultez-nous au 617 839 71 91 ou par courrier électronique Jean-Claude_Sanon@yahoo.com. D'ores et déjà, nous vous souhaitons une bonne audition. Nous allons passer à une courte pause musicale.
Avant-garde. Nous devons toujours à l'avant-garde. Pour ou même qu'à l'avant-garde, consultez Jean-Claude Sanon n'importe qui est dans 617 839 71 91. Toujours à l'avant-garde avec Jean-Claude Sanon, nous offrons tout service immigration avec accident. Nous remplissons toute forme, nous mettons en forme. L'aide pour toute occasion ou circonstance, interprétation médicale légale, qu'un docteur dans l'hôpital, qu'un avocat dans le tribunal, sans compter immigration, traduction toute qualité papier, certificat, acte de naissance, de mariage, de décès.
Service de traduction, c'est même joie. L'aide pour demande de visa devant ambassade, discours, docteur public, officier d'état civil pour marier ou.
Real estate, vendre à acheter caille, mettre cérémonie pour toute occasion, c'est Jean-Claude Sanon, non affilié à un bureau avocat en Haïti qui travaille serré à archives nationales et tribunaux. Service vite passé vent pour jugement acte de naissance tardive, acte de naissance tenant lieu, acte de décès, acte de divorce. Nous fait divorce tout sans qu'on pas besoin de payer ticket pour l'Haïti. Acte d'adoption, acte de mariage, civil ou religieux, extrait acte de naissance et de mariage, rapido presto, bon bagage sans problème devant immigration reconnu par l'État haïtien. Sans faux pas, consultez Avant-garde Jean-Claude Sanon dans 617 839 71 91.
Nous opérons seulement sur rendez-vous dans le nouveau local, numéro 11 Rexford Street, Mattapan, Mass. Always a pleasure to be here with you. My name is Jean-Claude Sanon. I'm your host of The Bridge. A collaboration that is done together with MCTV, Forum Communautaire, Radio Concorde, N480.net, and Camera Mosaic. A pleasure to come into your home and certainly to do what? You know the following. It's to educate, to inform, and to entertain too at times. Because we're not only going to have journalists or activists, but we'll also have entertainers too at times. And those who are really touching our community at large, one way or the other. I want to take a moment certainly to recognize that the fact that we have lost a mentor to me, a hero to some, and somebody who has achieved so much on behalf of people of color in Massachusetts. Bill Owens, who passed away, and we will truly have a special sometimes next week. Diane Wilkerson will be our guest, and we'll be discussing that because she was the one that is actually took over his seat after he was gone. So we want to give kudos to the family and shed our deepest sympathy to all of them at this time. And also congratulations on those who have also reached out higher levels in terms of city government or state government. But today we are here to discuss with our partner who is back. He is healthy as a horse and he's ready to tackle the year 2022 together with us. Kevin Peterson, a pleasure to have you, man.
It's always good to be here. It's good to be back in the land of the living, as they say.
I hear you. It's a pleasure for us to be healthy too because we know that we are fighting a big enemy.
Yeah.
Although we heard that lately Omicron has been going down the drain a little bit. Yeah. And hopefully, but you know, we got to do what we got to do, and we got to encourage other people to do what they're supposed to do.
That's right.
Because the common bond is that when we are all vaccinated, and we become immune certainly from the viruses, so therefore we stay a lot safer. So how are you feeling?
I'm doing much better. I don't think I had COVID. There was a late testing, and I may have had it, and it dissipated. I think I had the common flu, but it was a flu that lingered on and on. But anyway, I'm glad to be back. Glad to be paying attention to the local political scene, and just happy to have this conversation with you.
Well, folks certainly going to continue enjoying it, whether if it's on the television or also on the social media where
Yes.
they will be able to see. Our topic today has to do with a man who has served the state for 2 terms, and he's coming to the end of his rope, and he's actually addressed the society at large in terms of his accomplishment. It was so good and so nice. We may also have some sounds also coming in terms of what he has said and so on and so forth. But I did pay attention. So did you? So how was it?
Well, it was a good speech. This was his inaugural speech, not his inaugural speech, his farewell speech. The last speech that he would make to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and his official role as governor, the last speech he would make to the legislature. This is the speech that each governor makes each year. It is a form of reporting to the public, specifically through the legislature, the things that he's accomplished and some of the goals of the administration for the year to come. So it's an obligatory sort of duty for the governor to make this speech as the mayor in various cities. City of Boston makes this speech every year. It's kind of like we're reporting, and it prepares the Commonwealth for the governor's budget in particular. So some of the things that we heard beyond the accomplishments were Baker's intentions in terms of the things that he would prioritize during his last budget. It was a good speech. It was solid. There was evidence during this speech that he had improved vastly in terms of presenting to the public, the Commonwealth, the people of the Commonwealth, some of his ideas and some of his intentions, vastly in terms of where he was 8 years ago. So it was a very clearly articulated speech. There were some things that we should be happy about. The tax cuts, in particular.
You mean the one coming up for families of $700 million?
Yes, the $700 million tax
and
cut.
to help with the people who happens to be in renters as well as seniors and others.
That's exactly right. That was, for me, the highlight of his speech, addressing the needs of those people who are needy, those people who are poor, those people who are needing assistance in the Commonwealth. So I was very, very heartened by that. At the same time, those tax cuts, those activities weren't a part of his legislative and economic agenda throughout his tenure. So while we certainly should appreciate tax cuts for the poor so they can get along, I think it comes a little too late. Although I think
well, he's trying to embellish.
It's something for him to I think there is some talk, some rumbling about him running for president. And something like this, these headlines about him cutting taxes for the poor.
I also heard that he was advised not to run because they thought that he'll be much, much nicer, that he doesn't go into a 3rd term with hurdles.
Yes.
But going out nicely like that would probably help his future.
Exactly.
In terms of politics, so which I think that was very concerned. I want to do a segue a little bit.
Yes.
Which has to do with during his 7 years, I understood that he was mostly surrounded by Democrats instead of Republicans. The true Republican in the State House was really Polito. It wasn't Baker.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
Well, I think there's some truth to that. The Republican Party in Massachusetts is very conservative. We some of us are surprised by that, but there is a Donald Trump type element within the Republican Party, and I would venture to say that that element controls the Republican Party, and I think it was some of that pressure that encouraged Governor Baker to not seek a 3rd term. I think generally, dispositionally, in terms of his politics, Baker is a moderate Republican, closer to even being a Democrat.
Well,
some people say he's a Republican in name only.
I know. I
right?
remember years ago when he sat at my office in my van when he was running back in 2013, 14.
Yes.
And he came in and sat with me for about 45 minutes, taking note. As you know, we have a picture of a souvenir in there of him also joining us here live when he was running. He said that he could never be either or because inside of his home, I think either his mother was a Democrat and his father was Republican, so therefore this is why he heard the lecture from both sides, so he ended up becoming moderate. Yeah,
and true to form, I think he's in some ways he's governed that way. Standing at the end of his career as a governor, my perspective is that he could have done more along the issue of race. There have been very few cabinet appointees who have been of color, specifically who have been black throughout his 7 years, his 8 years tenure. That's not acceptable. Prior administrations had representation or diversity within their staff and within their cabinet in ways that again reflected the diversity, the demography of the Commonwealth. That's disappointing. There could have been more sort of structural work around engaging the issue of race in terms of creating a commission around race, in terms of creating very clear policies around diversity throughout the Commonwealth that doesn't include African Americans or blacks, but other ethnic groups, so to speak. That didn't materialize in any kind of visible and tangible way. So even as we sort of applaud them on some of the issues around tax and around sort of governing and safekeeping the Commonwealth in terms of its finances in particular, he was very good at that.
Right, he was very good at that because he also, blew up his horn in terms of I found the state and a 1.5 billion deficit, and I'm leaving it with 5 point something for rainy days, which I think
you got to give him kudos for that. He was an excellent financial manager and custodian of the Commonwealth's resources. Now, those resources, and my point is that those resources could have been spread into communities more substantively than they were during his administration.
But especially during the pandemic, I think that it could have done much, much better with us in terms of community.
Well, we talked on one of our previous programs around how there was disproportionate suffering within communities of color across the state, and the initial investment of money and resources into those communities were tragically slow, and it cost hundreds of lives in Boston within the black community throughout the Blue Hill Avenue corridor, so to speak. We don't know if those lives could have been saved, but we know that the response was slow, and that the resources that were expected from state government didn't come in a timely fashion. We're not blaming the governor around the death of people, but we're a little disappointed that those resources weren't there immediately. There wasn't, and I think this reflects the earlier point in terms of people of color closely surrounding the governor who has relationships with communities of color, so that if there are instances, tragic instances in communities of color throughout the state or even in Boston, that there could be immediate responses, and that didn't happen around the initial weeks and months around the COVID-19 pandemic.
You notice any flaws at all in terms of some of the things that he had brought into the scope of accomplishment? Was there, there's always facts to be checked on, and we may not be the fact factors ourselves to find out whether everything that he had pinpointed in terms of accomplishments were true or false. But were there anything that was lacking at all out of that speech that you can think of?
Well, I think there could have been more focus on where Boston, the capital city, should be going along the lines of race I keep coming back to that issue. This is something that I focus on in my activism. 2030 represents the 400th anniversary of the city of Boston. Yet I'm not sure if we're much more improved along the lines of race than we were in 1630, where slaves were soon to come into the Commonwealth. The plight of African Americans and people of color within the capital city, the medical mecca of the world, the Athens of America, so to speak, where all these resources are gathered in this very concrete and clustered place, aren't being used to the advantage that they could be in terms of addressing the issues of the poor and those who are locked out and those who are marginalized along the lines of race. I mentioned that this Boston is the medical mecca of the nation. Yet you look at health disparities between Haitian Americans or Trinidadian Americans as opposed to white Americans who live maybe 5 or 6 or 7 miles away from each other. Those health disparities are vast. The blacks live shorter lifespans in this city than whites. And we talk about Boston as a financial center of the United States in terms of all of its financial infrastructure. Yet we have incredible gaps in terms of wealth and income in the city that's based on race. So as the governor has been overseeing the Commonwealth, its capital city sort of reflects such tragedy along the lines of race. So that was missing. That was missing for me. Yeah.
Also within the 7 to 8 years period that he had spent as the governor.
Yes.
Speaking of the Mecca, which is Boston, speaking of mass and caste,
Mm-hmm.
has been under his
Yes.
eyes and ears. And he wasn't there to help Walsh reform this or reshape it.
Yeah.
So it ended up taking, should I say, the daughter of an immigrant to really come along
Yeah.
to really raise the awareness.
That's right.
And for him to finally participate on that, which he also blossomed himself out of the
Yeah.
presentation, saying that we're putting so many beds and so on and so forth. But also kudos to
Michelle Wu
for sticking up to the point and really getting him to get involved.
Right. So if there was any disappointing aspects of it, I would say this even to his predecessor to a certain extent, Deval Patrick.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Did you focus enough around the issue of race, even in the capital city? The nation looks at Boston through a lens of race,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and so often we hear commentary from across the country about how Boston is one of the most racist cities in the nation. So,
and there isn't much being done to try to remove that
Right.
whole stigma.
right, and so I think our governor, the next governor, I hope will pay more attention to that. To what degree can she or he use her power on Beacon Hill at the State House to improve the lot of people of color within the city of Boston, and make the city an example about how we can improve our racial conditions.
And it is an obligation because of the fact that she happens to be the head
Yes.
of the body of the mayors.
Yes.
So therefore, whatever trouble that they are facing,
That's right.
if you are able to really help curbing that situations, it'll blossom you. But you cannot wait at the last minute for somebody else to come in and and share with you what you need to do, and suddenly you are taking
You want to take credit for it, right? Right.
I thought that was not appropriate to
Right.
me anyhow.
Right. We just look at the prison industrial complex within the Commonwealth, where the disproportionate people of color are incarcerated and suffering in immeasurable ways, from COVID to being the recipient of violence within the jail and prison system. Disproportionately people of color, disproportionately black. I know of activists who are fighting even this morning around the unfairness there. The governor has oversight and sway over how those conditions can be improved. And I know, just in terms of following those prison activists who are pushing around human rights and human rights abuse and even voting rights, right?
Because I was in a conversation I think yesterday in the State House.
Yes.
Whereas Liz Miranda and a group of others
That's right.
were really fighting for this because
The Voting Rights Act.
yeah, and unfortunately, let me just tell you, we'll come back to this. So-called the people's representative, Rob Consalvo, voted against
Same-day voter
same-day
registration.
voter registrations. That's an embarrassment. It's
Yeah.
a shame. And I think that, I mean, for all the credit that you always want to take, that I'm with you, I'm always working with you on this and this and that. And suddenly, I don't know in whose pocket that he is,
Yeah.
he's certainly flipping around
Yeah.
on us. And I think we're going to have to hold him accountable.
We had to hold them accountable, all of them, including the governor, since we're talking about the governor. He has not gone to bat around the issue of same-day voter registration, where you can register and vote
Which
on
would
the
be
same
very
day.
beneficial to people of color. because,
Absolutely.
I mean, make the access as accessible as possible.
Right.
I mean, meet people where they at.
Mhm.
Because for those of us who are always fighting to get people out there to vote, it's a tough job.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember in 2008, 2009, when I moved Mattapan from 4% to 10%. You know, because of the work that I'd done together with Mass Vote at the time to really get it going. It's a lot of work.
Yes.
But
Yes.
whereas if you make it as easy as possible with same-day voting, you know, I mean, you can meet someone in the road that day and you say, let me take you on and
That's
just
right.
go and do that.
Will make voter
Make
much
it
easier.
accessible.
And the evidence across the nation, you know this, Jean-Claude, is that once you open up that opportunity for people, registration goes up, voter participation goes up.
Yes.
So it just makes
Don't
sense.
blame the folks only saying, oh, you all are lazy, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that. Make it accessible. If they don't move at that time, then they want to have no excuses.
That's right.
And I know why the guys love it like that, because they have a specific group that always voted them into office.
That's right.
So they don't care about the rest who doesn't want to participate. And this is where it's becoming a scary tactic once they are developing that. Anyways, but there was one comment that was made, which I know it could happen to be a joke, but I took it a little bit much deeper than that. When he says, I miss you, man, speaking to a Walsh, you know, from an Irish to an Irish. And he turned around and says, you know, to Michelle, whoa, I hope that you don't take it personally. Them guys love to lead together.
Yeah,
Push
yeah,
the ball. Her coming in, she became an intruder.
Yeah.
No matter what you say. So.
Well, she's the other, so to speak. I mean, it was probably meant as a joke, but it's so easy for others to read it in a different way. It looks like it easily could appear like it's the old boy network,
Yeah.
where it was more easy to communicate and get things done without doing the work of engaging people of color, people you haven't worked with before, which is harder, right? So I did note that comment, and I guess it was meant to be funny, but there's something that's not so funny about it.
I know.
And maybe it was an overture for Mayor Walsh to run for governor. Maybe he was inviting in some kind of backhanded way that Mayor Walsh should.
I wish I could have just saw it and turn it on to you, and it would be easier. But in closing,
Yes.
We also noticed that at the end of his speech, whereas he was addressing an issue that was very, very important, the way that social media have really turned us against each other.
Yeah.
The way that social media is not being helpful at all to people who do not see the facts,
Yeah.
but prefer to adapt to whatever it is. Because, I mean, still, in the world that we have come in, with all the damage done by the Trump administration,
Yeah. So.
social media has done
Yeah.
not much good to us. And it's time for people to really seek and for the right information instead of taking the propaganda. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And so it just takes me to the point that advocates make around the importance of civics in high school, of having a real sound base around
made that
how
talk.
to around how to understand how government works and how you should be engaging as a citizen. The social media reality has corrupted our social life and our politics. It's made it easier to access information. You have a computer in your pocket. Some people have 2 computers in their pockets at the same time, and that's wonderful to be able to access facts and to access images from across the globe and instantaneous. The bad part of that is that it can be used to create misunderstanding, distort reality, damage reputations. And I think that we don't think about how to really sort of grapple with that, about how to sort of build citizenship in a different way so that we respond maturely within the public sphere, even on social media. Then we're going to continue down this slippery slope. So if we had civics in high school, all of us, I think we may be able to sort of build some protections around how to think critically about governance and how to think critically about engaging even within the social media. It won't protect everything, but it might be helpful. I don't think we'll achieve eliminating social media unless we go into a totalitarian country where sometimes social media is cut down in China and other places. There are places where it's eliminated, but I don't think we'll go that way. But there's so much danger.
I know.
in it otherwise.
We used to call it an epidemocles, which is a blade with 2 sides of the sword.
That's right.
And
cuts both ways.
And, so it's bad. Anyhow, pleasure to hear you, brother.
Yeah.
Welcome back. And
Thank you.
We'll be having other sessions going on where people are really going to hear from the both of us. So hopefully we'll do a very good job in 2020.
We will.
Okay. It is the end of this first segment together with Kevin Peterson. It has been a pleasure being with you. And I'll tell you one thing, whatever that you are discussing at your table or outside in the street and so on and so forth, we'll bring it forth here and try to bring some light on it and help you understand the matter utmost. You have elections coming up, 2022. Get yourself ready. Register to vote. Participate, because that's the only way of saving our community is through participation. Signing off, Jean-Claude Sanon. Thank you. Mesdames et messieurs, bonsoir et bienvenue à notre émission Forum communautaire. L'émission qui vous promet d'être toujours à l'avant-garde de l'actualité, la politique, l'économie, l'éducation, la science, la santé, la loi et le divertissement. Forum communautaire est une émission télévisée tous les dimanches de 4h30 à 5h30 sur Cuenca Vision, WCEA, chaîne 58, Comcast 729. Notre ambition, c'est d'être vos yeux, vos pieds ainsi que vos oreilles, espérant de partager avec vous le meilleur. Pour vos publicités, questions, commentaires et suggestions, consultez-nous au 617 839 71 91 ou par courrier électronique jean-claude_sanon@yahoo.com. D'ores et déjà, nous vous souhaitons une bonne audition. Nous allons passer à une courte pause musicale.
Avant-garde. Nous devons toujours à l'avant-garde. Pour ou même qu'à l'avant-garde, consultez Jean-Claude Sanon n'importe qui est dans 617 839 71 91. Toujours à l'avant-garde avec Jean-Claude Sanon, nous offrons tout service immigration avec accident. Nous remplissons toute forme, nous mettons en forme. L'aide pour toute occasion ou circonstance, interprétation médicale légale, qu'un docteur dans l'hôpital, qu'un avocat dans le tribunal, sans compter immigration, traduction toute qualité papier, certificat, acte de naissance, de mariage, de décès.
Service de traduction, c'est même joie. L'aide pour demande de visa devant ambassade, discours, docteur public, officier d'état civil pour marier ou.
real estate, vendre à acheter caille, mettre cérémonie pour toute occasion, c'est Jean-Claude Sanon, non affilié à un bureau avocat en Haïti qui travaille serré à Archives nationales et tribunal. Service vite passé vent pour jugement acte de naissance tardive, acte de naissance tenant lieu, acte de décès, acte de divorce. Nous fait divorce tout sans qu'on pas besoin de payer ticket pour l'Haïti. Acte d'adoption, acte de mariage, civil ou religieux, extrait acte de naissance et de mariage, rapido presto, bon bagage sans problème devant immigration reconnue par l'État haïtien. Sans faux pas, consultez Avant-Garde. Jean-Claude Sanon dans 617 839 71 91.
Nous opérons seulement sur rendez-vous dans le nouveau local, numéro 11 Rexford Street, Malapen.
Soleil levé, bonjour. Est-ce que nous sommes forts? Est-ce que nous sommes dans l'air?
Non, Pam, c'est Rizvi Saint-Iné, directeur, honneur exécutif directeur Soleil Levé. Cap invité nous dans un bel programme ça, nous gagnons dans la cour Randolph avec grandette nous, grandette haïtien nous. Pas oublier nous sommes 100% haïtiens, nous travaillons dans la communauté nous, nous servons la communauté nous. Nous allons inviter ouais tout ça qu'a fait jeudi à en Soleil Levé. Tout ce qu'on va là, c'est ça nous fait en Soleil Levé et c'est ça nous fait chaque jour. Et l'autre avec l'autre activité toujours, nous mettons en dedans sur le lever pour grandir nous, pour grandir haïtien nous. Ouais, genre exercice la fête en dedans sur le lever. Exercice ça sont un exercice sur le vitamine B12 et vitamine ça am kadou depuis grandir yo pas jeune yo t'a perdu exercice ça. Yo senti yo malade pour journée. Deuxièmement, l'autre activité nouvelle, nous fait bingo, nous jouer domino, nous jouer cartes, nous fait toute l'autre activité, yo passer beans, yo passer tigandiri qui avec poids, yo fait toute qualité activité en dans soleil. Là au fini, nous servi yo snack yo et nous passer de l'eau, nous bail au snack. Après ça, ou kabal ouais dans kitchen ça cap passer et dans kitchen qu'on a là ouais manger à préparer ouais et staff yo cap préparer là William et madame regarde cap fait manger et madame maison cap préparer yo fin fait manger y a ranger y a clean et là on passer dans nursing qu'on a là ouais et nurse yo nous gagne nurse yo et monsieur Macula David et l'autre nurse yo nurse Berlin nurse Roselle qui la cap bail bon sur avec grandette nous yo et comparer service ça avec l'autre nous même n'a travail n'a bail bon service n'a bail bon qualité service bon bagage pour nous faire tout haïtien fier et de tête yo de yo même avec grandette nous j'en a servi grandette nous et grandette nous l'aime de ça nous pas oublier nous dans période nous là son période qui est très fragile c'est période Covid-19 tout moun yo avec face shield yo gen masque nous respecter tout principe social ça demande yo tout guideline yo et alors pour nous capable assurer nous que grandette yo fait ça et vinn et programme nan Jean revenir c'est comme ça retourner c'est ça que fait nous un petit slogan dedans nous pas prendre nous pas bail service transportation avec un directeur Manuel et l'autre chauffeur qui a frappé la donne même Jean ouais dans activité et directeur Henri avec un directeur Rudy Coulange qui c'est floor manager qui va monter Jimmy qui va monter adresse nous c'est 61 Pleasant Street Randolph Massachusetts 02368 nous chita là dans Randolph là ou carrelez nous tout dans 617 905 0341 ou bien dans 617 932 60 76. Soleil levé c'est pas tout haïtien. Mes amis n'attend nous venir dans soleil levé.
We are back again, and this is the segment that you are enjoying on a weekly basis, and at times you will certainly have different type of guests that comes along. My name is Jean-Claude Sanon. I'm the host of The Bridge, which is the connections between MCTV, Caméra Mosaïque, Radio Concorde, Forum Communautaire, and Info80.net, whereas you will read some of the print that we have also in regards to what is happening here in the city. I am also back with Kevin Peterson, because with them we plan to do a lot of work this year in terms of educating, in terms of informing, and then in terms of also doing some analytic reviews in terms of what's going on. 2022 happens to be a great year for Massachusetts, reasons being that we have so many people running. It's not just a few, it's a lot. So therefore, you as a voter has to concentrate as early as possible to know who you're going to vote for in the upcoming elections. Kevin, once again, man, we are back. And
Always happy to be on the bridge. On the bridge, yeah.
we're going to build it as strong as possible so I can make sure that everybody can cross over and make ends meet. It all started with there has been so many impact in terms of elections in 2022. We have what's her name again? Lydia Edwards.
Yes.
Made it through, right? She made it.
It was that was a if you don't mind me, that was just a tremendous victory and a surprise for to many who had been watching that race closely. It was a special election in the Senate district a little north of Boston, but that included East Boston, moving north. And the Boston candidate was not expected to win over the Revere candidate, so to speak. And Lydia Edwards was the is a Boston City councilor, and she was the Boston candidate. And we were so surprised to see her her victory in the special election about a sort of month ago. She becomes this year the only African American, only Black American in the Massachusetts Senate. I know we talked in previous programs about the redistricting work that we have done in terms of creating a new Senate seat within the Black community proper, and we did create that, and we'll have another African American or Black senator in the Senate. But she jumped the process for us by running in this. Lydia Edwards did, by running in this race and being successful. We're proud of her. We're proud of her. She will hold, I understand, both the Senate seat and the City Council seat for the time being.
Right, because they cannot be in special elections for her in that end. So I think, it's interesting.
Yeah.
But anyhow, let's look at some of the steps that has been going forward. Rachel Rollins also turned the whole thing around also.
Yeah.
From winning the prize from Biden and becoming, the U.S.
Attorney, yeah.
Attorney for Massachusetts.
Her rise.
She had crossed over some tough territory.
Yeah.
To get there.
Well, her rise has been spectacular. 4 years ago, she was unknown to the general public. She was
when she first walked in with me and to Forever Young, to me with a group of people. Not a lot of folks were there, but you could tell from her perspective that she was
going somewhere.
She was going somewhere.
Yeah, in a matter of 3-4 years, she became the Suffolk County District Attorney. She was part of a wave of district attorneys across the nation who were progressive in their prosecutorial philosophies and theories,
and not afraid of the status quo.
And not afraid,
to meet some of the challenges.
Yeah, the status quo.
She took some bold decisions.
Yeah, the status quo had been lock them up. Don't be too generous to people who have even created misdemeanors. Throw the book at them, so to speak. That had been part of the whole war on drugs and war on crime. And Rachel Rollins came in as a DA that says that there's some things we can focus on more, such as white collar crime, rather than someone stealing potato chips from the Walgreens. And she was criticized about that by her colleagues and even by local police about being too lenient. But she stuck to her guns, and I think and crime is down, and I think she really showcased her leadership abilities and was picked by President Biden to be U.S. Attorney General. She is a history maker, being the first black woman to hold that seat.
Making it that far.
We're proud of her.
Yeah,
and she's going to go after, she says, white collar crimes even more so than
That is-
U.S. attorneys have.
That is,
Well,
and
it's
they have
impressive.
plenty of them.
Yeah,
Plenty of them.
Yeah.
In comparison to the little chips that we have to fight within,
That's right.
within the city. She's also being replaced. Governor Baker has put somebody into
Has replaced her with Kevin Hayden, who was in the district attorney's office overseeing, I think, the sex crime unit.
Okay.
I believe he's a Democrat. I'm not sure. It's not clear that he'll run for the full term. He's a temporary appointment.
For about a year that is left.
Yeah.
to return.
He's the son, by the way, of a Robert Hayden, who for many years was a very prominent African American historian in the city of Boston. And as we are mourning the passing of Senator Bill Owens just this past Saturday, Robert Hayden passed not too long after Senator Hayden. Historians are not in the limelight. They're not celebrities, but Robert Hayden was an extraordinary historian who contributed to documenting Black Boston's history. It was a very seminal book that he wrote in the 80s or maybe the early 90s around Black Massachusetts 350 years. It documents the 350 years that blacks have been in the Commonwealth. Robert Hayden, he's the father of Kevin Hayden, who is the acting district attorney.
And chances are that, well, we don't know whether he's going to run, but if he's not, that position will certainly be available. There has been a lot
Yes.
of eyes who's been focusing on it. I don't want to name anyone yet, but I know we have a few politicians who are interested in that position. And they could have very easily, from an Irishman to another Irishman, they could have very easily picked up another one to be in there, but that's not what they did. So maybe they're positioning themselves to run for the DA in the upcoming race. Interestingly, the governor's race has turned into something else. Not only there are quite a few players coming on board, but what was the deal between Healy, Maura Healy, and Walsh? There's rumors around that if you make the step, I won't make it, and so on and so forth. So there was a waiting time between the two of them, but finally she made the decision of entering the race.
Yeah. I don't know what the deal was. It looks like it may have been a deal, but she's a good person to get in the race. I mean, she knows the Commonwealth well, and she's created strong relationships, Healy, with communities, particularly communities of color. I think she'll bring a nice perspective in terms of talking about how she will govern if she's elected. She is facing a formidable candidate in Diane Allen, who's a Harvard professor, very smart, but has done some deep thinking around public policy. Diane Allen is a real progressive, probably more liberal than Healy, but I think that I know that it would be very, very interesting and engaging to watch the two of them run for governor and have them share their ideas. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Definitely. Well, we know Sonia Chende has jumped into the bandwagon and second after Allen,
Yes.
who is the professor from Harvard. Sonia Howard is a state senate.
Yes.
She's also creating a space.
She is creating.
She's creating a space. But how does she look in the race to you as far as the three women are running?
Well, I think she will be competitive in the early months as she is now. I mean, the question is, can she raise money? Can she pull together?
That's the hurdle that all three of them are facing. I would say all of them are facing, as a matter of fact, because she has more money than everybody else in her war chest. And Healy also has run statewide.
Yeah.
So that's the second advantage.
That's an advantage.
But she has a disadvantage, which is the talk of the town. No GA has ever gotten to the positions.
That's right.
Based on, things that they have done in the past, a lot of folks are very upset with them and so on and so forth. So what are really her chances when she has to cross
Yeah, well,
this historic moment?
You know, going back to Harshbarger, you know,
You bet.
attorney generals do not win. They do not.
Marta Coakley.
Right. It seems like the public, the voters, cannot imagine a prosecutor, which is sort of what a GA is, an attorney general is, can't imagine them making that leap. I would imagine that you also make a lot of enemies, as you know, just in terms of you functioning as a prosecutor and as a regulator. You know, it may be a little more difficult to get through to constituencies that others would have some. So it seems like there's a kind of a curse, so to speak, on the person that runs from that office.
It may also be a curse for the Democratic Party,
Yeah.
just in case she does become the leading contender to go into the final against the Republican. We had two Republicans. We had Dill. I just don't want to say this, but actually it's a fact of life. Here in Massachusetts, being a pro-Trump, your chances of really winning this position is pretty slim. But however, there comes this new Doughty, Chris guy, who's a businessman from Redham, who has also done a tremendous amount of work in terms of building infrastructure, building, creating jobs and so on and so forth. I think that's what Massachusetts needs. And he's also coming up with a program or a plan that could Boston or people in Massachusetts can buy into, meaning that folks can no longer afford here. I mean, even his daughter had to leave Massachusetts because life is too expensive. So he wants to recreate a platform where as everybody can really stay here and work here and so on and so forth. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a wise position to run from. I don't think as a Republican you can be successful in running as a Trumpite. You know, you're very limited, because even if you galvanize the Republican Party in the primaries to support you, a deal will do that to a certain extent. Coming into a general election, where you're facing all the voters,
right, yeah.
You're not going to have too much success. So I think the approach, pro-business, the the talk about making Massachusetts more livable and accessible to all from a business and from an economic standpoint is the way to go. It is a Baker way to a certain extent, thinking of the Commonwealth as a place where businesses can thrive at the same time that people thrive. So that makes all the sense in the world for me. I am doubtful that Deal will come out of the primary and be the rep.
However, Chris Doughty is not certainly a well-known name,
Right.
So they may have to also introduce a third person who's probably a little bit more popular to face somebody like Maura Healey.
Yeah.
Now,
If Healy gets there,
yes,
we're not sure. We're not sure.
Well, I'm not quite sure that the machine might be well behind her. But can Dave make history in terms of it has been very difficult forever to get a GA to become a governor?
Yeah.
Anyhow, Sonia Diaz is leaving, and her position has become open.
Yes.
And they are already two.
Yes.
Parties, and Liz Miranda as well as Nika
Delgado. Yes. So Diaz is leaving. Her district was reconfigured. The so-called Second Suffolk District has changed a little bit. That includes part of Sonia Chang Diaz's old district, and also part of what was Nick Collins's old district. Okay. It's reconfigured to where it was back in the 70s. When Senator Owens won. Okay. It's slightly different because it does extend to the south into Hyde Park and deeper into Mattapan. It was different from it was exactly in the 70s, because there's been growth of minority communities throughout the city of Boston over those 30 years, 40 years. So this seat is open. So there's no incumbent, and there are a couple of challengers. Representative Nika Delgado announced this week on Wednesday that she's running for the seat. She comes out of a majority white district in Jamaica Plain and Brookline and Mission Hill. I believe she lives around. She lives in Jamaica Plain, but her district is mostly white. She's an African American. She's running for the seat, and Liz Miranda, who is a she's second term also, state rep, who lives in the Dudley Square area. They're going to be pitting, and there may be other candidates. There's talk about Minyard Culpepper, a pastor, a reverend who lives in Dorchester, running for this seat also.
There's good questions around Diane.
There is some rumor, talk about former Senator Diane Wilkerson running for this seat, which she had at one point, and was forced to resign because of corruption charges, and we know that story. So it will be a very, very interesting year as we come to realize who will be elected into this seat, which is very, very important. Because in this district, the Senate district, are some of the most needy people in the Commonwealth.
And they need somebody who could well represent them.
You need someone there.
And so on and so forth.
That's right. And they need that person, that senator, to pull down the resources from the state, money, and things that are needed to create health infrastructures, transportation infrastructures. Public education infrastructure. That's very, very important for the people in this new senatorial district.
Yeah. Reviewing what is going on in terms of politics in Massachusetts, there will be so many races that you'll have to focus on, and we are telling you gear up for this year, because it's not going to be fun at all, because you have to be up to par to really understand what's going on so that you can really make up your mind and make up your decisions. However, right now it's very early for you to register and vote and be able to participate in the upcoming elections. Sandy Zamor-Calix.
Running for sheriff. Before we go to Sandy, can I
Sure.
and her challenge to Steve Tompkins, I do want to say, as we're talking about Boston in particular, I know you have viewers from outside of Boston, but there are some rising stars in Boston. On the Boston City Council, Brian Roel.
Yeah.
He's first-time city councilor. He worked his tail off in a very, very in an open seat, left open by Andrea Campbell, who ran for mayor. He is very promising for the city of Boston. Look forward to seeing him shine. Ruthie Louision, she is a citywide candidate elected in the fall in the Boston City Council, raised the most money of any first-time city councilors.
And the first city councilor who ran commercials.
Ran commercials. She is a star, mentored by U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren, and we have a very promising city councilor in Roxbury, Tanya.
Yeah.
So I wanted to mention them because the landscape of Boston politics is changing, and I think it's changing for the better as it diversifies. Tanya, for example, is the first, as far as we know, Muslim on the Boston City Council. So that bodes well. We have Councilor Laura. In Jamaica Plain, that is a mostly white district. She's African American, a socialist. So things are changing in Boston, and it's worth noting. The sheriff's race is going to be interesting.
Very.
Because Sandy's decision to run, I think, may speak to some fatigue there may be around the incumbent Sheriff Tompkins. We're not sure. But she seeks to challenge him and become our next sheriff, and it'll be interesting. This is her first time running. It'll be interesting to see how she develops herself and develops sort of policies around how she will oversee corrections in the city.
Quite a few years together with them. I was just shocked and surprised. We will be soon having a conversation here on the bridge with her. But
well, it's not new that that those who have mentored you become those who you take the opportunity to supersede, to challenge and supersede. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. She may come to the table with ideas that that the current incumbent Steve Tompkins hadn't thought about, and that's all good for the people of the Commonwealth.
Before we wrap it up on this segment, Justice Breyer.
Yes.
Certainly would be granted a chance and opportunity to President Biden, and to whom he had just made his official announcement at the White House. But there's also words out there. There's at least 6 or 7 women of color out of all of them that he would have to choose probably one of them, hopefully. Folks did not expect that he would have accomplished his promise with Kamala Harris. So chances are that they become a little bit more confident on the president that he'll do the same, and he had promised that he would have a woman of color in the justice system. What do you think?
Well, I think he will fulfill his promise. He did with Kamala Harris. During the same campaign, he said that he will appoint a black woman to become the next Supreme Court justice. I think it's inevitable. And those candidates who have surfaced, I'm not familiar with all the names and all the background, but those who have surfaced seem to be well qualified, seem to be in the best interest of the United States in terms of filling that seat. It will be just another example about how we make change forward. I think it would be a historic appointment, and it will, just as young boys and girls during the Obama administration were so awed and so inspired about there being a first black president, so will people, once this appointment is made, young people look up to this new Supreme Court justice and say that they can do it too if they're interested in law and jurisprudence. So this is in the backdrop of us losing the votes around the Voting Rights Act,
Right.
last year, last week.
I didn't mean to segue onto this, but I think there's legislation being represented by Arizona in terms of how the legislator can have power to stop the result of an election.
Yeah.
This is absurd.
Yeah.
There's also 57% of the GOP right now have decided anybody who is coming out admitting the fact that it was fair and square, the presidency of Joe Biden, they're not going to pass into their books at all. They're not going to vote for them. So it's
we're in a tough time.
Yeah.
The opportunity however, to appoint a Supreme Court justice who follows in the tradition of someone like Breyer. I believe the leading candidate was clerked with Breyer, but also who follows in the tradition of a Thurgood Marshall. Right. Those things are promising, even in the backdrop of ideological and political division in our nation today.
Yeah, and Mr. Claiborne is making sure that he's pushing his card for the right representative.
That's right. That's right.
There's a fight.
We won't
name elitism fight.
Yeah, we won't name names, but Congressman Clive, who's awfully powerful, and I think part of the pledge around the appointment of the Supreme Court judgment was made to him, to Congressman Claiborne, as Biden was seeking his support in South Carolina. But he's pushing for a non-Ivy League educated Supreme Court justice, which I think is probably appropriate, and we shouldn't assume that because you've gone to an Ivy League school that you're entitled. Yeah. And I would imagine that there's some downsides of being educated in an Ivy League bubble, where this is Claiborne's point, where you're not exposed to the day-and-day experiences of
and it is
everyone
so
else.
true. I think the man is talking from his heart,
Yeah.
and I think his decisions should certainly be taken into account. We're going to wrap it up, but we almost forgot about the Secretary of State, who has been in power forever. He's been challenged probably about once or twice, and ever since they let him go forever. And right now, I think Tanisha Sullivan of the NAACP
Yes.
certainly going to give his money's worth.
Yes, I think she's going to bring energy into the race. Galvin, Secretary Galvin, has been very, very difficult to beat. He's a master campaigner, and no one has even come close to defeating him. Time will tell whether Tanisha will be able to put together a campaign that really sort of brings in sort of policy stances that will capture the imagination of the voters to such an extent that she replaces him. That's a toss-up at this point.
I know. We're going to bring all of them in here. We're going to discuss the issues with them. We're going to talk with them. So thank you for the excellent review. And I'm glad that you are back. And we're going to continue that rope and hoping that we will certainly touch the heart of the people of Boston.
And stay on the bridge. That's right.
It was a pleasure to have Kevin in person here with us today. And we'll cover just about all aspect of what's going on in Massachusetts and the politics, a little bit in Washington. And hopefully you'll be with us at the next occasions. Thank you so much for watching. Jean-Claude Sanon for Forum Communautaire. Mesdames et messieurs, bonsoir et bienvenue à notre émission Forum communautaire. L'émission qui vous promet d'être toujours à l'avant-garde de l'actualité, la politique, l'économie, l'éducation, la science, la santé, la loi et le divertissement. Forum communautaire est une émission télévisée tous les dimanches de 4h30 à 5h30 sur CUMMUNAUTAIRE AVEC JEAN, WCEA, chaîne 58, COMCAST 729. Notre ambition, c'est d'être vos yeux, vos pieds ainsi que vos oreilles, espérant de partager avec vous le meilleur. Pour vos publicités, questions, commentaires et suggestions, consultez-nous au 617 839 71 91 ou par courrier électronique jean-claude_sanon@yahoo.com. D'ores et déjà, nous vous souhaitons une bonne audition. Nous allons passer à une courte pause musicale.
Parents, est-ce que tu as aimé ouais, Timoun yo, content à l'école, a fait devoir et puis réussi jusqu'à ce qu'il aille dans le collège? Si oui, relais pressé, IFC USA, dans 617 448 92 59, 857 251 98 06. Nous sommes experts dans les affaires after school programme, tutoring, musique, qui aident capable de faire bon choix à l'école pour petit tout. Puis bonheur c'est grand matin. Relais pressé, IFC USA, dans 617 448 92 59, 857 251 98 06.